So I don't think you could point to a more vocal critic of President Trump than Bernie Sanders, because any and everything that Donald Trump does, if Bernie Sanders doesn't like it, Bernie Sanders calls out Donald Trump, and Bernie Sanders is relentless. And I think it's making President Trump's life a living hell because people like Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders has the weight of millions of progressives behind him. So Bernie Sanders, I want to demonstrate to you exactly what Bernie Sanders is doing and how he's responding to President Trump and how that's actually impacting President Trump. So, for example, he recently talked about how Donald Trump is moving to repeal Dodd-Frank.
You know, it is hard not to laugh to see President Trump alongside these Wall Street guys. To say this, Jake, and I don't mean to be disrespectful. This guy is a fraud. This guy ran for president of the United States saying, Donald Trump, I'm going to take on Wall Street. These guys are getting away with murder. Then suddenly he appoints all of these billionaires. His major financial advisor comes from Goldman Sachs, and now he's going to dismantle legislation that protects consumers. This is a guy who ran for president saying, I'm the only Republican. I'm not going to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And then he appoints all of these guys who are precisely going to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So I hope that all of those folks who voted for Mr. Trump because he thought that he would stand up for working people, man, this guy is, he's a good showman. I will give you that. He's a good TV guy. But I think he's going to sell out the middle class and the working class of this country and that business on Wall Street. He told us, in fact, it's in the Republican platform, he is going to bring back Glass-Steagall. We're going to be dividing up commercial banks from investor banks, from insurance companies. Then he has all of the big Wall Street guys on his side, and now he's working for Wall Street.
You heard that right. A sitting senator called the president a fraud. And you know what? He's right. Now, another example. So Donald Trump recently attended the National Prayer Breakfast, and Bernie Sanders decided to troll him. So Trump implied that he's now all of a sudden holier than thou, and he vowed to totally destroy the Johnson Amendment. But he did all of this while also mocking Arnold Schwarzenegger, saying that we should pray for his bad ratings. So Donald Trump found Jesus, but what's, hypocritical about this is that the thrice-married pussy grabber-in-chief will be reportedly signing an executive order that denounces premarital sex and same-sex marriages. But all of a sudden, now that he needs to pander to the evangelical right, well, he's found Jesus. And Bernie Sanders was quick to congratulate him on his so-called spiritual awakening. And Bernie Sanders is a savage. Now, Bernie also penned an article in the Washington Post where he used Trump's own words against him and asked whether or not Trump has the guts to stand up to Big Pharma. Now, before, Bernie Sanders printed out one of Trump's tweets and brought it to the Senate floor. So, the point I'm trying to make is that whenever Trump says something, Bernie Sanders is on his ass. If Trump said something previously and he looks as though he's going to contradict himself and go back on his promise to the American people, Bernie Sanders will use his own words against Donald Trump and call him out. Now, what's funny about this is that when I look through President Trump's Twitter feed, I don't see him responding to any of Bernie Sanders' attacks. And, this is really weird because we all know that the president is a thin-skinned imbecile who has to respond to everything everyone says about him. So the question is, why is it that the most popular senator in the country continues to rip Donald Trump and call him out, and he's just ruthless and relentless, and President Trump doesn't say anything back to Bernie Sanders? He's not picking these Twitter wars with Bernie. Well, it's pretty simple. Donald Trump is afraid of Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders intimidates Donald Trump for whatever reason, and this is demonstrated by the times that they've went toe-to-toe in the past. Bernie Sanders challenged Donald Trump to a debate. Donald Trump then agreed to the debate, and then he backed out. So that shows that he's a big chicken shit. Additionally, when it comes to raising the minimum wage, at a debate, Donald Trump literally had the audacity to claim that wages in the United States are too high. This is what he said specifically.
Taxes too high, wages too high. Wages too high. It's the world. I hate to say it, but we have to leave it the way it is. People have to go out, they have to work really hard, and they have to get into that upper stratum. But we cannot do this if we are going to compete with the rest of the world. We just can't do it.
So do not raise the minimum wage.
I would not raise the minimum.
Now, after Trump said this, Bernie Sanders ripped him for it. And this is what he said. Bernie stated, Donald Trump is a guy who does not want to raise the minimum wage. In fact, he has said that he thinks wages in America are too high, but he does want to give hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks to the top 0.3%. Now, the result of this was not just Bernie Sanders, ripping Donald Trump and Donald Trump responding. Bernie Sanders literally got Donald Trump to reverse his position. So not only did Donald Trump walk back his statements, but he got Donald Trump to do a complete 180 and actually tweet that wages aren't too high. So with Donald Trump being an egomaniac and knowing that if he responds to Bernie Sanders, he's going to get owned, well, I think it's very clear that President Trump is terrified of Bernie Sanders. I think that's incredibly apparent. It's evident to anyone who's paying attention. Donald Trump doesn't want to go toe-to-toe with Bernie Sanders because Bernie Sanders has the weight of millions of people on his side, and Bernie Sanders will crush President Trump if President Trump does try to respond to any of Bernie Sanders' attacks. So the reason why I say that Donald Trump's life is now being made a living hell because of Bernie Sanders is because Bernie Sanders continues to call out Donald Trump on his bullshit and hold him accountable. Yet Donald Trump, he doesn't want to pick a fight with Bernie Sanders because he will lose. So I think it's great. Bernie Sanders is effectively making Trump's life a living hell. Good, because we need someone who actually intimidates Donald Trump, because the things that he's doing in just the 3 weeks that he's been president are incredibly harmful. So Bernie Sanders will continue to call out Donald Trump's more harmful policies, and Donald Trump is going to be forced to zip his big lips because he knows Bernie Sanders is going to own him. So if you're frustrated with everything that Donald Trump is doing, just take satisfaction knowing that Bernie Sanders is really making Trump miserable right now.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.